Welcome to the Design Leaders Podcast. Every day I speak with candidates looking to grow in the world of design, development, and construction. I also speak with market leaders at the peak of their career who regularly talk about mentorship and helping the next crop of leaders in their development. This podcast is for those people hoping to learn about what the next step in their career could look like. Today, I'm here with Sloan Harris, CEO of VLK Architects. Sloan took a non-traditional path for an architect, which we'll dive into in a moment. But nowadays, Sloan steers VLK's growth, having overseen the expansion of VLK from 2 to 5 offices, diversifying markets, and doubling annual revenue. We'll likely touch on more of that too. Sloan, I really appreciate you joining me today.
I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you. We normally start these off just getting into your background and your journey. So if you don't mind, Sloan, telling me a little bit more about your background and how you got your start in design.
Sure. It's not by any means earth-shattering, passionate story. I wasn't the best high school student, but looking at my aptitudes, the tests that you take, determining where you should probably lead into your higher education, your career, said I should be a civil engineer. And I was smart enough to know that I didn't really want to do that. So architecture was something I was very interested in, more from a curiosity standpoint than any kind of experience that I might have had in secondary education. And it was something that I knew that would keep my interest throughout college, and potentially build a career out of. And so that's how I started in it. As I progressed through higher education, I just became more and more passionate about it. It just was the right fit for me. But I always gravitated more towards the business side of the profession. I love design, but I don't consider myself by any means a top designer. We have a lot of talented individuals that could blow my doors off in that arena at our firm and in the profession. So as I was going through college, I very quickly realized with my business interest that it made sense for me to also get my master's in business administration while I was getting my master's in architecture. And that's how I started.
Interesting. And I wonder, kind of moving past that a little bit, could we touch on some key milestones or key experiences in the early days of your career that have helped shape your career path?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, as I was finishing business school, wasn't certain that I wanted to continue to move into the profession of architecture. I was looking at other career pathways in finance and economics, and serendipitously, I guess you could say, I ended up having an opportunity to interview at the firm I'm at now for a construction administration position, which is not your typical pathway to move into the profession of architecture and gain licensure and just kind of climb the ladder, if you will. And it was the perfect fit for me. Being in that side of the business put me in the field a lot to see how things were coming together, how buildings were being constructed, put me in front of our clients, a lot of face time with a lot of key individuals around the project, both on our side from our firm, as well as the construction team side and the ownership side. And it just a mountain of information on a daily basis that I try to absorb as much as I could, and it was very fast paced as well. So very fortunate that opportunity provided itself to me, and that I was able to gain that position at VLK, and that's how I started.
I think what will be really interesting is there are going to be lots of people graduating, having just graduated, who may not be interested in taking that traditional route, and hearing from someone like yourself who didn't take that traditional route and still seeing kind of the lengths to which you've now moved to will probably be, impactful for a number of people out there. So I appreciate that. In those early days, who are some kind of key role models, key figures that, had a significant impact on your career?
Well, I think when I got to VLK, it was certainly my immediate director. His name is Mike Mabry. I always said he was like an encyclopedia of architecture. Could recite detailed standards, specifications, contractual language. And that was who I learned from the very first 2 or 3 years of my career, and has always been available to me to continue to go back. And that's the great thing about architecture. You never stop learning. There's always new things that arise, new technologies, new practice methodologies, construction technologies, obviously new code, new paradigms within our culture and our communities that we're responding to, that we're providing environments for. It just never stops. So that's how I started. He was a key role model for me. And I would say from a mentorship standpoint, one of the partners of the firm at the time, her name was Lisa Vardaman, still a mentor to me, very good, close, dear friend. You couldn't have been, if you looked up architect in the dictionary, her picture's there. Like, just the most incredible architect from a problem solving and team management and client service standpoint. So I was very fortunate to have those two individuals, as well as dozens of others, but those are the two that pop to the top of my mind when I'm asked that question.
Awesome. And then, still in keeping with those early days of the career, I imagine, going the non-traditional route, there must have been challenges faced. And I think, one thing that I didn't touch on last series that I want to touch on this series is how to overcome and what to do to look to overcome challenges faced. So what are some of the significant challenges that you faced in your career, and how did you overcome said challenges, Sloan?
Well, so my firm at the time was a small to mid-sized firm, which basically means that you don't necessarily get the full gamut of exposure to all things in the profession, from a design standpoint, from a construction document standpoint, construction administration, business marketing, all of those things. So there were experiences that I didn't necessarily gain to quote, be a well-rounded architect, I guess you could say. So what I did, and what I think anyone should do in that scenario, is capitalize off the peers that you have within your organization that do have those other experiences and expertise. Just like I had an expertise in construction administration, some of our designers didn't have that. Mm-hmm. And that's another great thing about architecture. It's very much a collaborative profession and collaborative environment. Now, that's not to say that if you want to be a small boutique practice that requires you to be able to have all of those skills, the business side, the marketing side, the design side, all the way through construction administration, be able to serve the project and the client from stem to stern, that's a pathway as well. It wasn't the pathway that I obviously chose. And so it's important to recognize what you don't know and where your weaknesses are, and then capitalize off the strength of others that are on your team so that you meet the end goal, which is to provide exceptional solutions for your clients.
Interesting. And I think, we've talked about kind of the background, the early years. Now, as CEO, what principles, strategies have you taken from your career that have proven kind of instrumental to driving that growth, driving success of VLK?
I mean, it is a bit cliche, but definitely surrounding myself with others that are able to do things that I would never be able to do, that have knowledge base that I don't have, that are more intelligent than I ever will be. That's how you scale any business, whether it's architecture or anything else, while always keeping your eye on the prize. I think I always say that architects tend to over-architect things and make them more complicated than they have to be sometimes, especially as it pertains to the business side of a firm, a design firm. So trying to always remain focused on what our mission and values were or are as a firm, and we've always said that if we're creating a new initiative, or we're working on a project for a client, or we're responding to a client need, that if our response can answer our core values, then we're doing the right thing. And it really is an oversimplistic way to put it, but it's true. And it's complicated as architecture is, and as many things that you have to attend to and pay attention to throughout the course of design and production. It's a long road, and so you kind of have to eat the elephant one bite at a time. And again, surround the team, constantly resourcing, providing more talent, more skill everywhere you can. We obviously have needs within the organization, always have, as we've continued to grow. But I've always said, bring in the best talent, and we will find the right fit for those individuals and what makes sense for our company and the culture of our firm.
I think whilst, segueing onto the culture of the firm, how do you foster that culture of innovation, creativity, collaboration, especially in, a post-COVID era where everyone is, seemingly talking about a hybrid work environment, much more digital, much more online, AI, machine learning? How do you foster that culture in this day?
One of the things that, one of the few positives, in my opinion, that came out of the pandemic was that it created a sense for me of empathy. Not to say that I didn't have any kind of empathy beforehand, but it certainly grew my empathetic strand exponentially, because as we were going through the pandemic, you just didn't know what anybody was dealing with in their home life, in their personal life. Maybe that a family member that got sick or worse, and all that while trying to continue to run a firm and deliver the projects that were already underway for our clients. So we've carried that notion of empathy as we came out of the pandemic and returned to work and returned to I guess, a sense of normality as you're working with people. It's very easy to lose sight of that. But if you practice that way, given the fact that you're in a very collaborative environment, given the fact that you're working on teams where you're reliant on the performance of your team members as they are reliant on the performance of yourself, that, in my opinion, has enhanced the culture, a strong culture that we already had. In regards to, AI, the technologies that we're deploying, and this sense of hybrid work environments, we don't necessarily subscribe to the hybrid work environment. We really feel like that we're in a profession of creativity, and creativity is fostered by working in person with others. There's a lot of benefit that we gain out of the technologies that we ramped up through the pandemic, like the fact that we're on Zoom right now. And we are continuing to use all those benefits, but back in a regular work environment. So I think for our firm, culture starts with being in person together and practicing with that sense of empathy. And we also really focus on balance. You can use that in a very broad sense all the way down to a micro sense, but balancing your approach and your projects, balancing obviously your work and your life, your personal life. You only get one of these lives, and you spend a lot of time at work. You especially spend a lot of time at work when you're in architecture. It's a very demanding profession. So making sure that people are balancing that with their family and their friends and their personal passions, and maybe even always providing opportunities to bring some of their personal passions into the work environment.
I think there's a couple of things, you said there. I couldn't agree more about the idea of being in an office, even in an environment that's totally different from what I'm sure your floor and your office looks like, a sales floor or a recruitment floor like mine. The idea of, learning through osmosis, being next to someone next to you who, as you said, is better at something than you are, and, imparting what you know to someone else. I actually think it's so crucial. And, I think what we are starting to see, at least from a recruiter's perspective, is the demand for people to be back, at least from a design and architecture perspective, the demand to be back in the office and being back amongst the teammates and the colleagues and be collaborative. So absolutely seeing that. And I think that's quite nice, a small silver lining in a couple of years that most of us, really didn't enjoy in COVID. The small silver lining is that hopefully many of us have come out of that with greater empathy and more understanding for everyone's home life, personal life, and personal situation. I think what kind of, I think we were touching on a couple of things there in terms of culture, but overall, what kind of sets VLK apart from other competitors in the industry?
Well, I think obviously it's our people. It's the culture of our firm, which is, the direct result of the contributions of all of our people. But that carries into the relationships that we have with our clients. Architecture, projects take a long time. Some of the projects we work on are a 5-year schedule. It means we're a partner with our clients for 5 years, right? So building those relationships, a lot of the things I just mentioned about understanding empathy and collaboration internally within our firm happens between us and our teams, our consultant teams, our construction teams, and our client teams as well. And how we do that, I think, is a differentiator amongst us compared to other firms in our space. One of our core values is always find a better solution. And it's very easy to kind of maintain the status quo. It can be more efficient. It can be the easier pathway as opposed to constantly trying to do something better. But I think that's a big differentiator as well. There's never any settling. And I think a lot of our clients are legacy clients. We've been working with them for decades. And so you certainly don't want to build any sense of apathy in that relationship, as well as the way you service them, the type of design you're providing them, the way that you're responding to their vision. That has to continue to be innovated. You have to continually evolve. And some of the best lessons I've learned is I've been caught being apathetic. I've been caught, just kind of on cruise control, and then realized that I wasn't doing the best for the firm, or I wasn't doing the best for the client or the project. And those are lessons that I've carried with me as we've continued to evolve as a firm and grow as a firm.
I think for those that that are listening, that client-centric, culture-centric, innovation-centric approach, I think whether it's junior professionals, intermediate or senior professionals, I hope they take that on board and find it interesting about VLK's culture and kind of the wider group as well. Moving forward, I have a couple of questions for you, Sloan, that you may not be able to answer. Some of the information that I'm asking about might be bound by confidentiality agreements, and if so, kind of let me know, and it might be too sensitive to VLK specific goals. But starting off, what are some primary goals, aspirations for VLK in the coming years? I hope that one's not too in depth, that one, or not too personal.
And I don't think my answer is going to be earth shattering. But you probably hear this from other leaders in the profession. We are at the forefront of what I view as radical change in the profession of architecture. I've been trying to figure out a different term to use than AI, and I haven't figured that out yet, but because it's just such a buzzword. But genuinely, the technologies that are at our fingertips now are greatly benefiting the profession, but at the same time, it can hurt it if we're not using it the right way, and we're not adjusting the way that we design and the way that we operate as an architecture firm moving into the future. Another leader in our profession, Dan Noble, CEO of HKS, said in a roundtable I was in with him a couple of weeks ago, that what can be commoditized will be. And that's true in architecture as well. It's true in everything. And some of the things that we do in the practice of architecture right now will be commoditized because of the way that AI is merging into our space. So we at VLK are investing a radical amount of time and capital in dealing with that, because I think that the way architecture looks over the course of the next 5 to 10 years is going to be very different than it is now. And we want to be proactive in that and be a part of what that looks like, as opposed to reacting to it. Because if we're reacting to it, we're probably going to make ourselves obsolete long term.
I think, from a perspective of someone who's not an architect, I'm not a designer. I just spend a lot of time talking with those who are and doing these podcasts. One thing that we keep touching on is AI and machine learning and the importance of it, and how we're at the forefront of a big change. I can only imagine it's very similar to when, people who are hand drawing drawings and doing architecture, perhaps not on a computer, were maybe moving online and digital. Is there a comparison there?
Well, I think that you'll never replace the human component of architecture. It'll just be different, and what that human contribution looks like. Or I could take any kind of software right now that might be parametric design and input data, and it will spit out design solutions for that particular program of a building or of a project. However, my understanding of my client, the nuances that we're talking about just being in person, and my understanding of their vision, and being able to read the tea leaves or see the forest for the tree, is what's going to be necessary to apply the solutions that parametric design tools and AI software produces for us, and being able to translate that and basically be expert consultants in the profession of architecture. But there is no doubt that we will not all be sitting behind computers producing Revit models and construction documents and design the way we traditionally have over the past 10 years. That will go away.
Interesting. Well, I'd hope, at least as someone who recruits in that space, new roles come up where we're going to have to start sourcing for, new types of strengths and skill sets. Yeah, interesting. Now, one thing I do often like to touch on these episodes is, putting the person behind the professional. So a bit of personal insight into you, Sloan. Outside of work life, what hobbies, what interests do you have that contribute to your overall well-being and your overall work-life balance?
That's a good question. That's always evolved as well, right? I have kids now, so they're 10 and 12, and they have their passions, and their passions are mine. So that's a nice outlet. My son happens to be heavily involved in soccer, and that was something I grew up doing, and I apply a lot of the things I learned working in a team environment growing up to my practice as a leader in my organization. There's not a lot of differences, and now I'm kind of in a manager coaching role with him, and so many lessons that I learned growing up that I apply in my professional existence are being repeated with him. So it's pretty cool. I use a lot of analogies with our leadership team that are happening with a 10-year-old soccer team that can be applied to a group of incredibly intelligent, highly educated people within my firm. Mountain bikes, snow ski, lots of things that involve getting the blood pumping, I guess, getting the adrenaline going a little bit. Lisa Vardaman, my mentor that I mentioned earlier, she asked if I have a death wish, and I certainly don't. But architecture can be very stressful. I've always said that the easiest part of architecture is the design side. The hardest part's the people, because you're always working with a diverse group of personalities and backgrounds and culture and personal preferences. from project to project, from client to client. And our goal in our job is to respond to them. So it can be tough. It can be tough. You think you have it all figured out, and then you move on to a new project and a new client, and all of a sudden you're starting from zero again. So that can be stressful. So providing outlets in my personal life that kind of just rebalance me is kind of what I do.
Interesting. I love, all those adrenaline activities, mountain biking, snowboarding. I think you mentioned you're a skier there. You can't mention soccer to a young Englishman and not expect to, go into it a little bit.
Right.
You mentioned, your son plays soccer. You mentioned those analogies. I'm assuming, these are some of the analogies that you'd look to use, but coming from, the greatest sports coach in history, one Sir Alex Ferguson used to compare the idea of a well-oiled business to his team and his group of players and staff. Do you, Sloan, have a team that you support, that you follow?
Probably won't like the answer since you brought up Sir Alex Ferguson, but Liverpool is my squad.
Liverpool. How does one this side of the pond, end up? So I understand, many years ago they might have had some success, but how does one this side of the pond find Liverpool as their club?
Yeah, I've always thought that the EPL is the strongest league in the world. So when I was younger, didn't really have a team I was following, but as I got a little older, I really wanted to dive in and have a team. And the comparison I always have for Liverpool is that they're like the Dallas Cowboys of the English Premier League. And so being here in Texas, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan as well. Very great history of success with a lot of frustration. So coincidentally, I ended up drafting a squad in the EPL that almost mirrors that. But I love the tradition of Liverpool. I've loved the coaches that have gone through there. A lot of the players just, I mean, not to say I couldn't have ended up, selecting a different team for all the same things, but all of a sudden Liverpool just was the right fit. And I've passed that down to my son too. So it's nice to sit here Saturday and Sunday mornings and watch them.
That is one of the great things about that those games being on at midday, 3 o'clock in the UK. It means we get to wake up at 6-7 o'clock in the morning, first thing, and the football's on.
Absolutely.
I hope you don't mind that you did mention there, that the Premier League is the strongest league in the world. I wouldn't be surprised if you see that snippet cut, and I'll use that for a little bit of advertising.
Man, don't give out my email address to everybody. I'll get Serie A and La Liga guys just coming at me hard. Yeah.
But I think it's a great end, to a discussion there. I think in terms of some, final thoughts, we're going to share this podcast. We're going to share it on LinkedIn. We'll share it on our website. We'll share it with you guys. But one thing that we often do get asked is, where can we learn more information about the guest, about the company? So Sloan, if anyone wants to learn more about VLK, where can they go? What can they do?
Yeah, I mean, obviously our website, vlkarchitects.com. There's an insights page there that we put out a ton of content. One of the things that we do a lot at VLK is a lot of research and development, a lot of research around the spaces in which we design for, and the type of clients and the things that the end user are experiencing in our projects. So there's an immense amount of content there. Also a lot of stuff about who we are as a firm, the people that we have, the accomplishments, the culture, and all of that. So it's kind of endless amount of information there. Of course, our LinkedIn page, our Instagram page, all the social media outlets, but they all kind of lead back to our website.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure that we include all of those links on this episode. So for those that have still made it here to 32 minutes in, thank you for listening, and to you, Sloan, thank you for joining today. I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely did, and I hope those who have had a chance to listen also enjoyed the discussion too.